Following the success of Demon Slayer Mugen Train, there seems to be a willingness for anime series to adapt major parts of their story into films. After being blown away by Mugen Train, I made a video about why this is a big deal for anime moving forward. In that video, I argued that this was an overwhelmingly positive outcome because of how sick I had become with non-canon anime movies. What I didn't foresee at the time is the potential negative impact that this could have and how it complicates a lot of decisions anime studios have to make. Then, one of my favorite series, Haikyuu, got the announcement that the rest of the story will be completed with 2 films. That means that over 100 chapters of material are going to be condensed into 2 movies. Barring any further announcement of a 3rd film, dozens of OVA episodes, or movies that are both longer than Gone with the Wind, these Haikyuu films are going to fail. If you enjoy this video, consider supporting my Patreon. The first 4 seasons of Haikyuu covers the first 291 chapters of the manga. That means that they have roughly adapted 3.34 chapters per episode. To even get a little closer to the exact number, if we take the rough account that every episode is closer to 18 minutes of content, then Haikyuu so far has adapted roughly 19% of a chapter per minute of content. This pacing of the anime is a great indicator as to why its production has taken so long over the years. And even with the current adaptation doing an overall great job so far, there are still fans that would certainly argue that there are many points in the first 4 seasons where the anime moved too quickly. When adapting chapters at this rate, it can be easy to skip over small character interactions that provide the reader with a lot of nuance. But the overall pacing of the anime has proved successful, with matches like Shiratorizawa vs. Karasuno being one of the best examples of the anime exceeding the source material. Before we get into more numbers, it's important to remember that there are so many factors that go into making a good adaptation. Since this video is speculation, we are looking at big strokes that will need to be made during the process of making these movies for the purpose of time, and not the smaller nuances of chapter by chapter adaptation choices. There are so many things for an adaptation to consider that would be way too much to cover in this video, but the major concern with the initial announcement of these movies is that there just isn't enough time. Looking at the length of the most successful modern anime movies, the most you can assume for the runtime is about 150 minutes each. There are 111 chapters left to be adapted, which would force the films to adapt the story at roughly a 37% of a chapter per minute, which equates to almost 6.6 chapters per episode length. That is over double the pace the adaptation has moved so far. For context, the second season of The Promised Neverland, the quintessential rushed adaptation, adapted its second season with 100 chapters, with a runtime of roughly 200 minutes. That means that these films will be closer to the adaptation rate of the second season of Promised Neverland than it has been through the first 4 seasons of Haikyuu. So, not the worst outcome you can imagine, but the pace at which The Promised Neverland was adapted should be seen as an untouchable mark. Something that is so bad that it made the second season unwatchable. The consequences of condensing that much material into such a short period of screen time meant that the creators had to come up with anime original story beats that didn't serve the story, something that all Haikyuu fans are terrified of happening. For these 2 movies, they will be forced to make major cuts to the story to reach the time constraints they've set for themselves. There is no cutting the edges or utilizing quicker pacing during gameplay sequences when you need to condense this much material. The reason that I was optimistic after the release of Mugen Train is because of how that movie came about. Demon Slayer's story structure left the perfect chance for a 2-hour film to adapt one arc for the series. That meant a totally canon trip to the theater, and it didn't need to sacrifice any story beats to make it happen. And it solved the issue of the non-canon anime movie. Nothing is worse than seeing your favorite series get a non-canon movie release, where the movie has better animation than the canon parts of the show. The best part about it was that Demon Slayer returned to a televised format for its next story arc. The flow of the story matched the way that Demon Slayer released it. Mugen Train got to use the advantage of a movie production with a theatrical release, while keeping the spirit of the overall show intact. The same thing happened with the Made in Abyss adaptation. When the story presented an arc that fit a movie length, that's what they did. The appeal for studios and fans here is obvious. Fans get adaptations in a vehicle that supports the story structure, and for the studios, they get the opportunity to release a movie and try to gain more profit that way. But, as we should have known, the end goal of profit can lead to decisions that might not be best for the fans of the series. For Haikyuu, there is no question that 2 movies do not match the story structure needed for a proper adaptation. This is a worrying departure for a production that broke the norm with their 3rd season, making a 10-episode season that adapted just 1 match. The 3rd season will likely prove to be the high point of the anime. At 39 chapters, the match between Shiro Torizawa is the longest single match in Haikyuu, and the pacing of the adaptation reflects some cuts, reaching closer to a 4-chapter per episode pace. The season could move at a rate like that because of action translating to the screen at a faster rate. The next major matches in the series would need close to 8 episodes each to adapt them at the same rate. Based on the rough 18-minute marker, the Shiro Torizawa match is the equivalent of a 3-hour movie. Now they want to fit around 3.5 times the material with 4 hours of content. So it's clear that the Haikyuu movies will have a major issue with the time needed to actually make the story work. Trying to look on the positive side of things, what benefits could a movie have on this already stellar production? The hype of a movie release is very appealing for a series that concluded years ago. In addition to this, the ability to finish the series within a year and avoid the Attack on Titan 80-part final season is great. From a studio perspective, they get to finish the story quickly while creating easy buzz for a manga that isn't currently serializing. The other advantage is the potential of the rally scenes to be the best we've seen so far. My favorite 2 matches are yet to be adapted, so just thinking about the motion we could get from a film production is enticing. However, for the fans of the series, I don't think the trade-off of a quicker release and better animation will be worth the sacrifice of the critical story elements. For the rest of this video, I will dive into some spoilers for the manga as I try to piece together ways that the movies could go. Barring any new information about extra content coming alongside these 2 movies, I would strongly recommend reading the manga as the best way to experience the story. And then when the movies come out, you will already have the emotional payoffs for the rushed material that we will get. There are 3 major matches left: Nekoma, Kamomedai, and the Jackals versus the Adlers. Each of the matches are a little over 30 chapters. The only extra story beat is the time Hinata spends in Brazil. There are 3 options for the movies. The first is to remove the time skip entirely. The second is to split it right down the middle, having the first movie end halfway through the Kamomedai match, and the last option is to either fit both the Nekoma and Kamomedai match in the first movie, or leave Nekoma by itself and fit all of Kamomedai in the next match with the time skip, serving as a sort of epilogue. The first option, with the removal of the time skip, would have disastrous effects on thematic and character payoffs, but it would allow for the most faithful adaptation of Nationals that we could get. This may be the best option that would essentially lead to a read the manga ending. The pacing would be far closer to that of the Shiro Torizawa matches, and while still not as ideal as a full season of adaptation, it would at least leave hope that a 3rd film could be on the horizon one day. The second option, cutting right down the middle, would make for an awkward stopping point, but it would make the faster pacing of the matches spread equally. The trade-off here would be that most of the nuance would be lost overall, but you would guarantee that at least some parts of every single match would make it to the screen. The last option would leave 1/3 of the story getting a good adaptation, and the others extremely rushed, likely making these movies feel unbalanced. Maybe it could be done if the second film was given a far longer runtime, but again, there is just way too much material. In this case, the time skip would prove as an epilogue instead of an equally important part of the story. All of these scenarios force compromise of storytelling quality in favor of animation. This video isn't meant to negate the hard work that will surely be poured into by the staff of these films, but to bring into focus the difficulty of adaptation and the pressure that the studios are under, especially in the wake of the success from Mugen Train. Maybe keeping up the quality of adaptation is too much to ask for from these studios, especially when pressure from different sides of fandoms demand different things. Some support the stylistic change from the 3rd to 4th season, others detest. Some will wait as long as it takes for the adaptation to reach its highest quality, others will lose interest if it takes that long. The pressure to be profitable with a property that does not release new content is high. And even though I don't know for sure, I wouldn't be surprised if it was the main reason these movies were announced instead of a 5th season. The best we can hope for is a deep respect of the source material as the staff attempts to deliver what seems to be an impossible task, fitting 111 chapters of material into 2 films. Maybe they can do some magic and create the perfect conclusion. There is no video I would rather make than a retrospective on how I was wrong and that the Haikyuu movies were a massive success. But with all of the evidence I've laid out here, the likelihood of that outcome is slim. Unless something major happens, the final 2 Haikyuu movies are destined to fail. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy this, please consider supporting my Patreon. Hope to see you in the next one.